What's going on, dudes and dudettes? Yeah, took a little off the sides. Hopefully that's all right with everybody. So yes, USC had another freaking crazy, almost near collapse of this whole entire game, especially against a team they were definitely supposed to win by more than 10 points with, according to like betting options. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with them, especially on offense, because everyone just assumed that was going to be secured and cured up just because Harrow is still in the second year there and everything should have been fine. You got the same quarterback returning, even more receiver depth and tight end depth, and you still got some pretty good running backs. The only other question would be the offensive line, but I don't know. It's just weird that even how they had said, mentioning about Graham Harrell, like, is his offense good enough or is there something wrong with it? I don't know. It just seems like he always talks about incorporating the run in there, and yeah, they have been getting a couple of big plays to make that run average per game really high. It's just weird that it has to take those big plays, because other than that, if they don't have those big runs, then it's probably just barely 100 yards, because I think he'd rather just throw it. But then they question Keaton Slovis too about his arm, because they're wondering if it's arm, his shoulder, elbow, anything like that, because a lot of the balls were wobbly and inaccurate. A lot of his throws were, and there was really no weather messing him up. You could understand maybe the first week against ASU because it was raining, but in Arizona it really wasn't that windy or no other weather, so I don't know if it was just jitters. But he went there last year and played well against ASU. I know he's from Arizona, but yeah, it's just very, very strange, all these questions about the USC football team. Yes, it did come at a victory, but still, like I said, I thought Utah was a scarier matchup because it's at Utah, and the last handful of years, every time they've gone to Utah, they have lost, and they're definitely going to lose because this Utah defensive line is going to be great. Their defense is usually a lot better than their offense, so defense creates opportunities, easy scoring opportunities, and yeah, I just think it's going to be bad if they play the game, because I know Utah hasn't been able to play the last 2 weeks because of COVID issues, and maybe USC gets a little bit of luck and has to switch and play some other team. I know UCLA and Cal played because their other teams they were facing had COVID issues, and then they played on Sunday, which is a pretty interesting deal, which is pretty cool, I thought. So hopefully that's an opportunity if Utah ends up not being able to play for USC against USC. Then the Lakers somehow pulled off a pretty big trade. I kind of was surprised about how much little they had to give up for this type of guy, because I know they were trying to get Dennis Schroder from the Oklahoma City Thunder, the point guard, during the trade deadline earlier in the year, but he just wasn't available for some reason. And all they had to give up was my favorite player, Danny Green from North Carolina of the Lakers, with his big like $15 million contract, and then their first round pick that they have this year. So that's like another $1.5 million going away. And then they bring on Schroeder's, which is barely over $15 million. So they have a couple, maybe $1 million extra that they could pull around and give out, distribute to other players. So I think it's a very great trade, just because they need a stability type of point guard coming off the bench like that, if he does, because it just depends about some other players who opt in, opt out. But this guy has definitely been one of the better guys I've been trying to get on the Lakers for a while, even before he got traded to OKC, and now that he is, let's hope he does well, because I think it was like a week or two ago he mentioned in a German interview that he didn't want to go to any of the LA teams because he didn't think he'd fit there. But I think once getting in a few sessions with LeBron, he'll believe the culture and understand his role, and then hopefully he'll excel in it, because he averaged almost 20 points a game, nearly 10 assists as well coming off the bench. So that's going to be awesome for the Lakers. And yes, Anthony Davis has opted out for free agency, as we all assumed it would. And they did say that the Lakers are going to give him multiple options for his contract. So it could be like a 1-and-1, so he signs for this year, and then the following year is a player option, so he could opt out to try to get more money. Or it could be about 3-year deal, maybe a 4 to 5 year deal. Not sure that'll be all on the table. I hope he takes the one that doesn't give up, take much money away from the Lakers in free agency, but because he's that top talented player, of course he is, because you have to pay those guys higher salaries for some reason in the NBA, I guess to make it fair for everybody else. So yes, and I did mention because of Schroder that it would affect some people, and Rondo looks like he's going to opt out as well. I believe KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, opted out today as well. So yeah, it's not surprising a lot of these guys getting off of their 1-year deals. Maybe even Avery Bradley does it as well. We haven't heard that officially yet, but they could all return just to sign different contracts to be able to work within the next couple years. But we'll see. Hopefully it's not for a lot of money, but you know, I'll talk about DeMar DeRozan, why Schroder's trade kind of ruins his chances of coming to LA, but yeah, I'll get into that real quick. And then Pale Naotiote, the starting linebacker for USC, he left the game pretty early and he was in concussion protocol. He did not return, and looks like he's going to still be in concussion protocol, which means he's most likely going to miss next week's game, which sucks. Usually you don't come back the next week right away, so it's tough. He is a guy that I was really high on just because he was like top 7 or 8 overall player coming out of high school his year, and he's just been okay. He hasn't been as spectacular as I thought he would be, and USC missed out on a couple of great linebackers, and they're both at Oregon, of course, doing amazing things, but whatever. So yes, sucks for him. Hopefully get him back the following week, and hopefully it's not something that lingers on, but yeah, definitely something to watch out for. So of course, whenever I see news like this that comes from a page on like Instagram, I don't really believe it, but it would be pretty interesting to see in a couple years or so if the Lakers can make a trade for a guy like Ben Simmons, or even hope to sign him after his deal is over. I know there is some talk like he actually might be headed to freaking Houston for James Harden if Philadelphia wants to do that, or even James Harden might go to the Brooklyn Nets to be with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, which would be pretty crazy. But who's gonna shoot the ball on that team? But yeah, should be very interesting. If he's with Houston, it might be an easier trade just because Lakers and Houston usually do trade with each other for some reason compared to a lot of other teams. But yeah, it's just a great opportunity if they were to get a guy like that, who is, in my mind, when it comes to basketball, like certain basketball things like playmaking and just certain athleticism, he is like a LeBron James. But I see him, a lot of people will say that, but I see him like as a more athletic Lamar Odom. Because Odom was, because he was very tall and long, his arms, he was able to do a lot of stuff, and play make and score or whatever. But this guy just has a different athleticism. If he could just stay 100% healthy, then he might become one of the greats. But I mean, to be playing point guard at 6'10", 6'11" is just amazing. It's freaking crazy when you watch some of his highlights. And then when we go down to some other USC like head coaching news, that they did bring up the head coach at Penn State, James Franklin, that he might be interested, or that they would want that guy to be the head coach of USC next. But if you look at the Penn State program ever since he's been there, it's just kind of been the same deal where they have a lot of talent. He even had Saquon Barkley, and they didn't ever get to a championship. They lost to USC in a Rose Bowl. But they've always like kind of been lackluster when it comes to being in bigger games, kind of like USC, and then falling to crappy teams at random points and ruining their whole entire season like USC in the past. And then, I mean, even this year, his team is like 0-3, 0-4, and they just look horrible, even though they were ranked in the top 10 to begin the year. And yet USC is 2-0 and still is barely like number 19 or 20 overall, even though they've been barely skin of their teeth wins, it's still winning in COVID college football. But yeah, I don't want this guy just because it's going to be the same thing. He'll get the splashy recruit here and there that Clay Helton is still able to get because it's USC, but I don't know if he can develop them to be even really better players, especially going into the draft. That's what a lot of these guys want. They want to be able to play, win championships, and still develop enough to be top high draft picks and make some money in the NFL. I just don't see that if he comes to USC, which sucks. But like I mentioned before, DeMar DeRozan earlier with the Anthony Davis stuff and Dennis Schroder, I think because of that contract, a lot of the deals, the mock trades for DeRozan had Danny Green involved because of his $15 million deal. But a lot of the other guys who have those options, like a KCP or even Avery Bradley, those guys that have the higher contracts are most likely going to opt out. So if they were in, you could still use it as a trade to San Antonio, but it looks like they're going to head into free agency, so Lakers are stuck and they can't make a trade for DeRozan. That's why he picked up his $27 million option, which is good for him because you get some of that guaranteed no tax money right there in San Antonio right away. But it does make it a little bit more difficult to get to the Lakers as of this second. But I heard like another guy, Wesley Matthews, who recently played for Milwaukee Bucks and Dallas Mavericks as well. They say that he's one of the top targets for the Lakers as a 3-and-D guy, so he could be coming to the Lakers in a couple days. Never know. Draft is like a couple days, like Wednesday, I think, but Lakers don't have a first round pick unless they end up buying one of the second round picks because they're a lot cheaper, under $1 million a year. So they could be in play with that, but we'll see what players get into there. Should be pretty interesting. Then Evan Mobley, the top overall player come out of high school, who's at USC right now. Was named a finalist to the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar watch list, which is the top center in the nation. I believe he was also named to the first team All Pac-12 as well. They're like pre-honors, All-American honors, so that's really awesome for him. Hopefully he can prove to be the type of player he's projected to be and then be another top 3 overall pick for USC going into the following NBA draft. So hopefully good things are coming for him. And then other USC basketball news, Harrison Hornery, I think that's like, it's a funny last name, but he goes to Mater Dei, which is out there in the OC, and I think he is a newer commit. A lot of these guys who are officially signing have already like committed to USC a while ago. I just forgot if this guy did or not, so I'll mention it right now so I don't have to for future videos. And then to end this off, yes, some crappy news. So Kevin Porter Jr., one of the top guys leaving USC last year and was drafted in the first round by the Cleveland Cavaliers, he was stopped the other day because he had a loaded gun in his car. I guess he wasn't supposed to or didn't have the license for it. So he's already got off of bail and has to go to like some type of probation hearing, I guess. So it looks like just a little slap on the wrist, of course, but you never know how teams are going to react to something pretty small like that, especially like Cleveland. They could just say, well, we have other young guys, so let's just get rid of him or trade him for a second round pick. So, I mean, I would love to see him come play for the Lakers because he's definitely that 3-point offensive guy that you need. He does lack some defense, but his athleticism is enough, I think, to compete on a good team, on a good defensive team like the Lakers. So he could be in play for LA, you just never know. But yes, it's going to be very crazy. It's like people can make trades now in the NBA starting today, and then Wednesday is the draft, and then I believe Friday is like free agency. It starts officially where people can sign. So yeah, it's going to be a crazy freaking week. I'll most likely see you Wednesday again, or you'll hear my voice for Fantasy Football Wednesdays. I am winning pretty good against my cousin Jacob. I think he's just given up, so thanks for the easy win. And yeah, I'll get more in depth with that when Wednesday comes. But thanks for watching, people. Like and subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what y'all think. Have a great rest of your day. Yes, I did forget to put that The Chargers did lose yesterday, so now they will be a top 5 team. They're drafted top 5 overall, which is great. So at least for me it is. I hope they get that lineman out of Oregon. He could play left tackle, he could play any position, and he's going to be great for the Chargers if they need to get into the top 3 at least. But definitely looks like it's heading towards that, so I'm only happy about that for the Chargers as of right now. I'm glad to watch them on live TV lose just for the benefit that they might get a player, but of course they'll screw it up because they're the Chargers. But alright, peace out, people.